Hey everybody, thank you so much for clicking on this video. Today we're going to talk all about breathing. I think one of the biggest questions I get asked online is how to breathe while training, and that's definitely really hard to just write down and explain. So today we're actually going to go through it, talk about why it's important, and I will show you real life implementations. So breathing and training are all about pressure management. I want you to think about your core as a canister. We have the TVA, the diaphragm, and the pelvic floor, amongst other things, but these are kind of the key players here. So when you inhale, your TVA and pelvic floor expand and descend. When you exhale, they contract and ascend. If you're not working in conjunction with your movement, you are at the very least not going to get much out of your workout, and at the very worst, going to injure yourself. You've seen people using weightlifting belts before, right? So these are meant to give your trunk a little bit more stability and support. So I want you to think of your breath like a natural lifting belt. To see it in action, let's start with some very basic breathing drills so you can understand how to create that anatomical belt, we'll call it, and then implement that into your training. All right, so first thing we're gonna do before we apply our breath work to exercises is just make sure that we are breathing, period. What I typically see from people is either holding their breath, so not breathing at all, sucking in or drawing in rather than bracing, and just a general lack of tension. So a lot of the breathing that you see online is, I feel like people are just trying to look hot. You shouldn't look hot. It's like, where in reality, you actually want to be exhaling like you're breathing out through a straw. So you want to inhale through the nose, as that's going to keep your heart rate a little bit lower. On your exhale, through a straw. A lot of times people make fun of me and say that I sound like a snake or I'm making a lot of noise, but this is actually a maneuver that's gonna help protect your core and make your lift stronger. So before we apply that into actual training, let's go through two different breathing exercises or techniques just to make sure we're all on the same page. All right, first thing we're gonna do here is some 360 breathing. I've broken this down in a number of videos before, but we're gonna do it again today. So first thing you're gonna need is either a chair or a bench, because we are gonna do this from a supine 90-90 position. And then you're also gonna need your hamburger hands. We're gonna take those hands and place them around your ribs. Your ribs aren't only located in the front, they're gonna wrap around the whole trunk. And this concept of 360 breathing is essentially letting your ribs expand in 360 degrees and contract. I find that this is a little bit easier to start to learn lying down because you have that floor as a guideline of figuring out if you're actually making your way into the back of the ribs. So let's do it. So laying down on the ground with the feet elevated, we want to make a 90-degree angle between our knees, hips, and ankles. Once I'm here, I'm gonna slightly tuck my hips under so that space under my low back disappears. I'm gonna take my hamburger hands, place them around the ribs. So we're gonna inhale through the nose like we chatted about, trying to expand the ribs. On your exhale, you're gonna let out that nice straw sound as the ribs come back in. As you're doing that, you should feel a little bit of a brace through your core. Bracing is different than drawing in. Warning, you're about to see my stomach. So bracing versus drawing in, pulling in. It's simply two different actions of what your TVA can do, or your transverse abdominis, and both of those have a different time and place. In this time and place, we don't want to draw in, we want to brace. All right, so once you've mastered your 360 breathing, now we're gonna learn a two-step exhale. So I like to learn this one from a seated position, sitting right on top of the pelvic floor. We're gonna take those hands into the same hamburger hand position. We take a big inhale. On your exhale, you're gonna brace first with a sharp exhale, and then let the rest of it out. What that's gonna do is actually get you to brace fast with your core to prevent any type of injury and give you the most support at the hardest part of your movement. So that one more time, we take our big inhale. On your exhale, and you continue to brace as you deflate the lungs. That's the specific breathing pattern we're gonna implement in a lot of our heavier lifting. So let's stand on up and we're gonna implement it now. All right, we're gonna start with a good old-fashioned kettlebell deadlift. So our breathing mechanics here, we're gonna inhale as we descend, exhale to stand. A good rule of thumb is that you wanna use that exhale on the hardest part of the lift, and you're gonna have the most gravity weighing down on you at the bottom. So setting up this kettlebell deadlift, we're gonna stand directly on top of it. We want the bars of the bell lined up with the arches of the feet. We're gonna reach down, pull the hips down, squeeze the armpits down. How many more times can I say down? We take a big inhale. On your exhale, push the floor away to stand. Inhale down, exhale up. You can see that I'm using that 2-step breath. The heavier the weight, the more you're gonna need to implement that. It's not necessary for every single lift, but again, I would say the heavier you go, the more you're gonna need that hold in the middle to really keep that brace. And then you can continue to exhale as you work a little bit less against gravity. Let's move into the goblet squat. So goblet squats, we're gonna use the exact same breathing pattern. We're gonna inhale on the way down, exhale to stand. Again, gravity's pulling us down, so that's gonna be the hardest part of the lift. To get this guy up, clean it up, elbows are in nice and tight. We're gonna take a big inhale. On your exhale, up. One of the biggest mistakes I see with people in lifts like this is that they take that inhale and then they wait until the very end to get their exhale out. That's not gonna give you the biggest bang for your buck in terms of core support for a lot of exercises. There are lots of different ways to breathe, different methods, different maneuvers. This is the one that I find helps the most people across the board. On that sharp exhale, you should feel your core brace like you're trying to brace for someone to punch you in the stomach. Let's move into an overhead press. So in your overhead press, we're gonna exhale as we push up, again, working against gravity. Inhale on the way down. So you can use a kettlebell or dumbbell here, doesn't matter which one. I'm gonna exhale, inhale down, inhale down. For your overhead press, the heavier you go, again, we're sensing a theme here, you're gonna need a little bit more of that 2-step exhale. You might not need that if you're not going super heavy, but once again, the biggest mistake I see, and I used to make it all the time too, exhaling when I get all the way up to the top. So you wanna make sure you at least give that little to get all the way up and bring it back down. We have a room rearranged for this one. All right, we're gonna look at a bench supported single arm row. That's a lot of words. I'm gonna get set up on my bench with one side supporting me. We reach down for the bell. You can see with this one, I'm taking a little bit more of just that elongated exhale rather than the throughout the entire thing. Personally, I just find that with single arm rows, I don't need that 2-step breath. But again, this is not just one right or wrong way to do this. Play around and see what version works the best for you. All right, and then finally, you're gonna need either a very light medicine ball for this guy or a yoga block, or I guess like a denser pillow or a stuffed animal. We can really get creative at home. We're gonna do a stagger stance chop. So this is actually something I've been working on in a few of my live classes in the Fit Club. And I did get a lot of questions about how to breathe during slams or chops or things like that. So we're gonna talk about it today. So setting up this chop, I'm gonna bring one leg front, one leg behind. Most of my weight's gonna be on this front foot. You wanna make sure you're not so far staggered that this turns into a squat. We want this to be more of a hinge. So I'm gonna bring my prop up overhead, big inhale. Exhale, I'm gonna chop over the front leg, sit back and load that hip. You'll notice here, I'm just taking that one catch breath and then I'm just kind of letting it go, or that catch exhale. So that again, we bring it up, one more time. The reason that's gonna be a little bit different from our strength drills is because that's more of a power exercise, meaning we're trying to move as quickly as possible, creating and then absorbing that force of the stop. With things like that, you're gonna take that strong exhale and hold so that you don't lose tension in the body and actually fall over. This would be applicable to things like kettlebell swings, which I guess we can show, things like snatches, things like jerks, things that have a little bit more of that fast and then hold, or things that just have more of that explosive power. So in a swing, that's gonna be your breath technique. So again, all of the different options that I showed you today are gonna be the most common, and I would say the most supported by other coaches, as well as the science behind them. Again, your core is more than just your ab muscles. We wanna think of our entire torso as supporting all of our different movement patterns. And the best way to do that is by really starting to understand how to manage the pressure system within your body. So hopefully that was helpful and informative. I get this question all the time, so I figured I would just finally make a video about it. If you have any questions about specific breath techniques for specific exercises, you can always leave it down below. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out, and I will see you all in the next one.